Okay.
Hold
Great.
on one second.
No
still
problem.
getting situated. I'm coming from another meeting. So,
No problem. Take your
right.
time. I did just start the recording, so
Oh,
well, to those who are, and there are people that are listening. I got an email from someone that had a few questions. So people apparently are listening to the recordings. So welcome everyone to Savitri Circle, hosted by Infinite Conversations in collaboration with Aurobindo Association. And we decided last time to reread Book 1, Canto 3, the Yoga of the King, the Yoga of the Soul's release. So we'll start with a three or so minute meditation, and then establish the reading order after that. During the meditation, I had the thought that I'm simply open to, we decided to read it straight through, and I just want to say I'm open to, if anyone has some sort of impulse that is keeping them from being present during the reading, to a question, or like, what is Sri Aurobindo talking about here? I would say I'm at least open to having things come in if it helps us, presence. I don't know how other people feel. I'm happy to hear if other people feel differently. I know we decided to read it straight through, but I just want to say that I'm more open and plastic and less rigid than that. If other people really do want some sort of clarification or comment during.
I like it being open and we can just go with the flow.
Good.
Suggestion.
Good.
That sounds good to me as well.
I appreciate the thought, Matteo, but I don't think, I think we'll just stay open to the flow, as Andrea says.
Yeah, good. Nice. Okay. So great. Reading order. How about just by order on my screen? Geoffrey, John Robert, Marco, Andrea, me. Geoffrey, John Robert, Marco, Andrea, me. Good.
Canto III, the yoga of the king, the yoga of the soul's release. A world's desire compelled her mortal birth. One in the front of the immemorial quest. One in the front of the immemorial quest, protagonist of the mysterious play in which the unknown pursues himself through forms and limits his eternity by the hours, and the blind void struggles to live and see. A thinker and toiler in the ideal's air, brought down to earth's dumb need her radiant power. His was a spirit that stooped from larger spheres into our province of ephemeral sight, a colonist from immortality. A pointing beam on earth's uncertain roads, his birth held up a symbol and a sign. His human self, like a translucent cloak, covered the all-wise who leads the unseeing world. Affiliated to cosmic space and time, and paying here God's debt to earth and man, a greater sonship was his divine right. Although consenting to mortal ignorance, his knowledge shared the light ineffable, a strength of the original permanence entangled in the moment and its flow. He kept the vision of the vasts behind. A power was in him from the unknowable. An archivist of the symbols of the beyond, a treasurer of superhuman dreams, he bore the stamp of mighty memories and shed their grandiose ray on human life. His days were a long growth to the supreme, a skyward being nourishing its roots on sustenance from occult spiritual founts, climbed through white rays to meet an unseen sun. His soul lived as eternity's delegate. His mind was like a fire assailing heaven, his will a hunter in the trails of light. An ocean impulse lifted every breath. Each action left the footprints of a god. Each moment was a beat of puissant wings. The little plot of our mortality, touched by this tenant from the heights, became a playground of the living infinite.
Jeff, I don't think you have the same page breaks that we do, Geoffrey.
No, I have to guess it. So sometimes they go a bit longer and sometimes a little shorter.
We'll help you out too. No worries.
This bodily appearance is not all. The form deceives. The person is a mask. Hid deep in man, celestial powers can dwell. His fragile ship conveys through the sea of years an incognito of the imperishable. A spirit that is a flame of God abides, a fiery portion of the wonderful, artist of his own beauty and delight, immortal in our mortal poverty. This sculptor of the forms of the infinite, this screened, unrecognized inhabitant, initiate of his own veiled mysteries, hides in a small dumb seed his cosmic thought. In the mute strength of the occult idea, determining predestined shape and act, passenger from life to life, from scale to scale, changing his image self from form to form. He regards the icon growing by his gaze, and in the worm foresees the coming God. At last the traveler in the paths of time arrives on the frontiers of eternity. In the transient symbol of humanity draped, he feels his substance of undying self and loses his kinship to mortality. A beam of the eternal smites his heart. His thought stretches into infinitude. All in him turns to spirit vastnesses.
His soul breaks out to join the oversoul. His life is oceaned by that super life. He has drunk from the breasts of the mother of the worlds. A topless supernature fills his frame. She adopts his spirit's everlasting ground as the security of her changing world, and shapes the figure of her unborn mites. Immortally, she conceives herself in him, in the creature the unveiled creatrix works. Her face is seen through his face, her eyes through his eyes. Her being is his through a vast identity. Then is revealed in man the overt divine. A static oneness and dynamic power descend in him, the integral Godhead's seals. His soul and body take that splendid stamp. A long dim preparation is man's life, a circle of toil and hope and war and peace, tracked out by life on matter's obscure ground. In his climb to a peak no feet have ever trod, he seeks through a penumbra shot with flame, a veiled reality half known, ever missed, a search for something or someone never found, cult of an ideal never made real here, an endless spiral of ascent and fall until at last is reached the giant point through which his glory shines, for whom we were made, and we break into the infinity of God. Across our nature's border line we escape into supernature's arc of living light. This now was witnessed in that son of force. In him that high transition laid its base. Original and supernal immanence, of which all nature's process is the art. The cosmic worker set his secret hand to turn this frail mud engine to heaven use.
A presence wrought behind the ambiguous screen. It beat his soil to bear a titan's weight. Refining half-hewn blocks of natural strength, it built his soul into a statued god. The craftsman of the magic stuff of self, who labors at his high and difficult plan in the wide workshop of the wonderful world, modeled in inward time his rhythmic parts. Then came the abrupt transcendent miracle. The masked immaculate grandeur could outline, at travail in the occult womb of life, his dreamed magnificence of things to be. The crown of the architecture of the worlds, the mystery of married earth and heaven, annexed divinity to the mortal scheme. A seer was born, a shining guest of time. For him, mind's limiting firmament ceased above. In the griffin forefront of the night and day, a gap was rent in the all-concealing vault. The conscious ends of being went rolling back. The landmarks of the little person fell. The island ego joined its continent. Overpast was this world of rigid limiting forms. Life's barriers opened into the unknown. Abolished were conception's covenants, and striking off subjection's rigorous clause, annulled the soul's treaty with nature's nescience. All the gray inhibitions were torn off, and broken the intellect's hard and lustrous lid. Truth unpartitioned found immense sky room. An Empyrean vision saw and knew. The bounded mind became a boundless light. The finite self mated with infinity. His march now soared into an eagle's flight. Out of apprenticeship to ignorance, wisdom upraised him to her master craft and made him an arch-mason of the soul, a builder of the immortal's secret house, an aspirant to supernal timelessness. Freedom and empire called to him from on high. Above mind's twilight and life's star-led night, there gleamed the dawn of a spiritual day.
As so he grew into his larger self, humanity framed his movements less and less. A greater being saw a greater world. A fearless will for knowledge, a fearless will for knowledge dared to erase the lines of safety reason draws that bar minds soar. Souls dive into the infinite. Even his first steps broke our small earth bounds and loitered in a vaster, freer air. In hands sustained by a transfiguring might, he caught up lightly, like a giant's bow left slumbering in a sealed and secret cave, the powers that sleep unused in man within. He made of miracle a normal act and turned to a common part of divine works, magnificently natural at this height, efforts that would shatter the strength of mortal hearts. Pursued in a royalty of mighty ease, aims too sublime for nature's daily will, the gifts of the Spirit crowding came to him. They were his life's pattern and his privilege. A pure perception lent its lucent joy. Its intimate vision waited not to think. It enveloped all nature in a single glance. It looked into the very self of things, deceived no more by form. He saw the soul. In beings, it knew what lurked to them unknown. It seized the idea in mind, the wish in the heart. It plucked out from gray folds of secrecy the motives from which their own sight men hide.
He felt the beating life in other men invade him with their happiness and their grief, their love, their anger, their unspoken hopes entered in currents or in pouring waves into the immobile ocean of his calm. He heard the inspired sound of his own thoughts re-echoed in the vault of other minds. The world's thought streams traveled into his ken. His inner self grew near to other selves and bore a kinship's weight, a common tie, yet stood untouched, king of itself, alone. A magical accord quickened and attuned to ethereal symphonies the old earthy strings. It raised the servitors of mind and life to be happy partners in the soul's response. Tissue and nerve were turned to sensitive chords, records of luster and ecstasy. It made the body's means the spirit's acolytes. A heavenlier function with a finer mode lit with its grace man's outward earthliness. The soul's experience of its deeper sheaths no more slept drugged by matter's dominance. In the dead wall closing us from wider self, into a secrecy of apparent sleep, the mystic tract beyond our waking thoughts, a door parted, built in by matter's force, releasing things unseized by earthly sense, a world unseen, unknown by outward mind, appeared in the silent spaces of the soul. He sat in secret chambers, looking out into the luminous countries of the unborn, where all things dreamed by the mind are seen and true, and all that the life longs for is drawn close.
He saw the perfect in their starry homes, wearing the glory of the deathless form, laying in the arms of the eternal's peace, wrapped in the heartbeats of God ecstasy. He lived in the mystic space where thought is born and will is nursed by an ethereal power and fed on the white milk of the eternal strength. till it grows into the likeness of a god. In the witnesses' occult rooms, with mind-built walls on hidden interiors, lurking passages opened the windows of the inner sight. He owned the house of undivided time. Lifting the heavy curtain of the flesh, he stood upon a threshold serpent watched and peered into gleaming endless corridors, silent and listening in the silent heart for the coming of the new and the unknown. He gazed across the empty stillnesses and heard the footsteps of the undreamed idea in the far avenues of the beyond. He heard the secret voice, the word that knows, and saw the secret face that is our own. The inner planes uncovered their crystal doors. Strange powers and influences touched his life. A vision came of higher realms than ours, a consciousness of brighter fields and skies, of beings less circumscribed than brief-lived men, and subtler bodies than these passing frames. Objects too fine for our material grasp, acts vibrant with a superhuman light, and movements pushed by a superconscient force, and joys that never flowed through mortal limbs, and lovelier scenes than Earth's, and happier lives. A consciousness of beauty and of bliss, a knowledge which became what it perceived, replaced the separated sense and heart, and drew all nature into its embrace.
The mind leaned out to meet the hidden worlds. Air glowed and teemed with marvelous shapes and hues. In the nostrils quivered celestial fragrances. On the tongue lingered the honey of paradise. A channel of universal harmony, hearing was a stream of magic audience, a bed for occult sounds earth cannot hear. Out of a covert tract of slumber self, the voice came of a truth submerged, unknown that flows beneath the cosmic surfaces, only mid an omniscient silence heard, held by intuitive heart and secret sense. It caught the burden of secrecies sealed and dumb. It voiced the unfulfilled demand of earth and the song of promise of unrealized heavens and all that hides in an omnipotent sleep. In the unceasing drama carried by time, on its long listening flood that bears the world's insoluble doubt, on a pilgrimage without goal, a laughter of sleepless pleasure foamed and spumed, and murmurings of desire that cannot die. A cry came of the world's delight to be, the grandeur and the greatness of its will to live. Recall of the soul's adventure into space, a traveler through the magic centuries, and being's labor in matter's universe. Its search for the mystic meaning of its birth and joy of high spiritual response. Its throb of satisfaction and content in all the sweetness of the gifts of life, its large breath and pulse and thrill of hope and fear, its taste of pangs and tears and ecstasy, its rapture's poignant beat of sudden bliss, the sob of its passion and unending pain, the murmur and whisper of the unheard sounds which crowd around our hearts but find no window to enter, swelled into a canticle of all that suffers to be still unknown, and all that labors vainly to be born, and all the sweetness none will ever taste, and all the beauty that will never be.
Inaudible to our deaf mortal ears, the wide world rhythms wove their stupendous chant, to which life strives to fit our rhyme beats here, melting our limits in the illimitable, tuning the finite to infinity. A low muttering rose from the subconscient caves, the stammer of the primal ignorance. Answer to that inarticulate questioning, there stooped with lightning neck and thunder's wings, a radiant hymn to the inexpressible and the anthem of the superconscient light. All was revealed there, none can here express. Vision and dream were fables spoken by truth, or symbols more veridical than fact, or were truths enforced by supernatural seals. Immortal eyes approached and looked in his, and beings of many kingdoms neared and spoke. The ever-living, whom we name as dead, could leave their glory beyond death and birth to utter the wisdom which exceeds all phrase. The kings of evil and the kings of good, appellants at the reason's judgment seat, proclaimed the gospel of their opposites, and all believed themselves spokesmen of God. The gods of light and titans of the dark battled for his soul as for a costly prize. In every hour loosed from the quiver of time, there rose a song of new discovery, a bow twang's hum of young experiment. Each day was a spiritual romance, as if he was born into a bright new world. Adventure leaped an unexpected friend, and danger brought a keen, sweet tang of joy. Each happening was a deep experience.
There were high encounters, epic colloquies, and councils came couched in celestial speech, and honeyed pleadings breathed from occult lips to help the heart to yield to rapture's call. And sweet temptations stole from beauty's realms, and sudden ecstasies from a world of bliss. It was a region of wonder and delight. All now his bright clairaudience could receive. A contact thrilled of mighty unknown things, awakened to new unearthly closenesses. The touch replied to subtle infinities, and with a silver cry of opening gates, sights, lightnings leaped into the invisible. Ever his consciousness and vision grew. They took an ampler sweep, a loftier flight. He passed the border marked for matter's rule, and past the zone where thought replaces life. Out of this world of signs, suddenly he came into a silent self where world was not, and looked beyond into a nameless vast. These symbol figures lost their right to live. All tokens dropped, our sense can recognize. There, the heart beat no more at body's touch. There, the eyes gazed no more on beauty's shape. In rare and lucent intervals of hush, into a signless region he could soar, packed with the deep contents of formlessness, where world was into a single being wrapped, and all was known by the light of identity, and spirit was its own self-evidence. The supreme gaze looked out through human eyes and saw all things and creatures as itself, and knew all thought and word as its own voice.
Their unity is too close for search and clasp, and love is a yearning of the one for the one. And beauty is a sweet difference of the same, and oneness is the soul of multitude. There all the truths unite in a single truth, and all ideas rejoin reality. There, knowing herself by her own termless self, wisdom supernal, wordless, absolute, sat uncompanioned in the eternal calm, all-seeing, motionless, sovereign, and alone. There, knowledge needs not words to embody idea. Idea seeking a house in boundlessness, weary of its homeless immortality, asks not in thought's carved brilliant cell to rest, whose single windows clipped outlook on things sees only a little arc of God's vast sky. The boundless with the boundless there consorts, while there one can be wider than the world, while there one is one's own infinity. His center was no more in earthly mind. A power of seeing silence filled his limbs, caught by a voiceless white epiphany into a vision that surpasses forms, into a living that surpasses life. He neared the still consciousness, sustaining all. The voice that only by speech can move the mind became a silent knowledge in the soul. The strength that only in action feels its truth was lodged now in a mute, omnipotent peace. A leisure in the labor of the worlds, a pause in the joy and anguish of the search, restored the stress of nature to God's calm. A vast unanimity ended life's debate.
the war of thoughts that fathers the universe, the clash of forces struggling to prevail in the tremendous shock that lights a star, as in the building of a grain of dust. The grooves that turn their dumb ellipse in space, plowed by the seeking of the world's desire. The long regurgitations of time's flood, the torment edging the dire force of lust that wakes kinetic in earth's dullard slime and carves a personality out of mud. The sorrow by which nature's hunger is fed, the estrus which creates with fire of pain, the fate that punishes virtue with defeat, the tragedy that destroys long happiness, the weeping of love, the quarrel of the gods ceased in a truth which lives in its own light. His soul stood free, a witness and a king. Absorbed no more in the moment-ridden flux where mind incessantly drifts as on a raft, hurried from phenomenon to phenomenon. He abode at rest in indivisible time. As if a story long written but acted now, in his present, he held his future and his past, felt in the seconds the uncounted years, and saw the hours like dots upon a page. An aspect of the unknown reality altered the meaning of the cosmic scene. This huge material universe became a small result of a stupendous force. Overtaking the moment, the eternal ray illumined that which never yet was made. Thought lay down in a mighty voicelessness. The toiling thinker widened and grew still. Wisdom transcendent touched his quivering heart. His soul could sail on thought's luminous bar. Mind screened no more the shoreless infinite. Across a void retreating sky he glimpsed, through a last glimmer and drift of vanishing stars, the superconscious realms of motionless peace, where judgment ceases and the word is mute, and the unconceived lies pathless and alone.
There came not form or any mounting voice. There only were silence and the absolute. Out of that stillness, mind, newborn, arose, and woke to truths once inexpressible, and forms appeared, dumbly significant, a seeing thought, a self-revealing voice. He knew the source from which his spirit came. Movement was married to the immobile vast. He plunged his roots into the infinite. He based his life upon eternity. Only a while at first these heavenlier states, these large, wide poised upliftings could endure. The high and luminous tension breaks too soon. The body's stone stillness and the life's hushed trance, the breathless might and calm of silent mind. Or slowly they fail, as sets a golden day. The restless nether members tire of peace, a nostalgia of old little works and joys, a need to call back small familiar selves, to tread the accustomed and inferior way, the need to rest in a natural pose of fall. As a child who learns to walk can walk not long, replace the Titan will forever to climb. On the heart's altar dim the sacred fire. An old pull of subconscious chords renews. It draws the unwilling spirit from the heights, or a dull gravitation drags us down to the blind driven inertia of our base. This too the supreme diplomat can use. He makes our fall a means for greater rise. For into ignorant nature's gusty field, into the half-ordered chaos of mortal life, the formless power, the self of eternal light, follow in the shadow of the Spirit's descent. The twin duality, forever one, chooses its home mid the tumults of the sense.
He comes unseen into our darker parts, and, curtained by the darkness, does his work, a subtle and all-knowing guest and guide, till they too feel the need and will to change. All here must learn to obey a higher law. Our body cells must hold the immortal's flame. Else would the spirit reach alone its source, leaving a half-saved world to its dubious fate. Nature would ever labor unredeemed. Our earth would ever spin unhelped in space, and this immense creation's purpose fail till at last the frustrate universe sank undone. Even his godlike strength to rise must fall. His greater consciousness withdrew behind. Dim and eclipsed, his human outside strove to feel again the old sublimities, bring the high saving touch, the eternal flame, call back to its dire need the divine force. Always the power poured back like sudden rain, or slowly in his breast a presence grew. It clambered back to some remembered height, or soared above the peak from which it fell. Each time he rose, there was a larger poise, a dwelling on a higher spirit plane. The light remained in him a longer space. In this oscillation between earth and heaven, in this ineffable communion's climb, there grew in him, as grows a waxing moon, the glory of the integer of his soul. A union of the real with the unique, a gaze of the alone from every face, the presence of the eternal in the hours, widening the mortal mind's half-look on things, bridging the gap between man's force and fate, made whole the fragment being we are here.
At last was won a firm spiritual poise. a constant lodging in the eternal's realm, a safety in the silence and the ray, a settlement in the immutable. His heights of being lived in the still self. His mind could rest on a supernal ground and look down on the magic and the play, where the God-child lies on the lap of night and dawn, and the everlasting puts on time's disguise. To the still heights and to the troubled depths, his equal spirit gave its vast ascent, a poised serenity of tranquil strength, a wide, unshaken look on time's unrest, faced all experience with unaltered peace. Indifferent to the sorrow and delight, untempted by the marvel and the call, immobile, it beheld the flux of things, calm and apart, supported all that is. His spirit's stillness helped the toiling world. Inspired by silence and the closed eye's sight, his force could work with a new luminous art on the crude material from which all is made, and the refusal of inertia's mass, and the gray front of the world's ignorance, and nescient matter, and the huge error of life. As a sculptor chisels a deity out of stone, he slowly chipped off the dark envelope, line of defense of nature's ignorance, the illusion and mystery of the inconscient, in whose black pall the eternal wraps his head, that he may act unknown in cosmic time. A splendor of self-creation from the peaks, a transfiguration in the mystic depths, a happier cosmic working could begin and fashion the world shape in him anew, God found in nature, nature fulfilled in God.
Already in him was seen that task of power. Life made its home on the high tops of self. His soul, mind, heart became a single sun. Only life's lower reaches remained dim. But there too, in the uncertain shadow of life, there was a labor and a fiery breath. The ambiguous, cowled, celestial puissance worked, watched by the inner witnesses' moveless peace. Even on the struggling nature left below, strong periods of illumination came. Lightnings of glory after glory burned. Experience was a tale of blaze and fire. Air rippled round the argosies of the gods. Strange riches sailed to him from the unseen. Splendors of insight filled the blank of thought. Knowledge spoke to the inconscient stillnesses. Rivers poured down of bliss and luminous force, visits of beauty, storm sweeps of delight rained from the all-powerful mystery above. Thence stooped the eagles of Thence stooped the eagles of omniscience. A dense veil was rent, a mighty whisper heard, repeated in the privacy of his soul, a wisdom cry from rapt transcendences, sang on the mountains of an unseen world. The voices that an inner listening hears convey to him their prophet utterances, and flame-wrapped outbursts of the immortal word and flashes of an occult revealing light approached him from the unreachable secrecy. An inspired knowledge sat enthroned within, whose seconds illumined more than reason's years. An ictus of revealing luster fell as if a pointing accent upon truth, and like a sky flare showing all the ground, a swift, intuitive discernment shone.
One glance could separate the true and false, or raise its rapid torch fire in the dark to check the claimants crowding through man's gates, covered by the forged signatures of the gods, detect the magic bride in her disguise, or scan the apparent face of thought and life. Oft inspiration with her lightning feet, a sudden messenger from the all-seeing tops, traversed the soundless corridors of his mind, bringing her rhythmic sense of hidden things. And music spoke, transcending mortal speech. As if from a golden phial of the all-bliss, a joy of light, a joy of sudden sight, a rapture of the thrilled, undying word poured into his heart as into an empty cup, a repetition of God's first delight, creating in a young and virgin time. In a brief moment caught, a little space, all knowledge packed into great wordless thoughts, lodged in the expectant stillness of his depths, a crystal of the ultimate absolute, a portion of the inexpressible truth revealed by silence to the silent soul. The intense creatrix in his stillness wrought. Her power, fallen speechless, grew more intimate. She looked upon the seen and the unforeseen. Unguessed domains she made her native field. All vision gathered into a single ray, as when the eyes stare at an invisible point, till through the intensity of one luminous spot, an apocalypse of a world of images enters into the kingdom of the seer.
A great nude arm of splendor suddenly rose. It rent the gauze opaque of nescience. Her lifted fingers' keen, unthinkable tip bared with a stab of flame the closed beyond. And I awake in voiceless heights of trance, a mind plucking at the unimaginable, overleaping with a soul and perilous bound the high black wall hiding superconscience. She broke in with inspired speech for scythe and plundered the unknowable's vast estate. a gleaner of infinitesimal grains of truth, a sheaf binder of infinite experience. She pierced the guarded mysteries of world force, and her magic methods wrapped in 1,000 veils. Or she gathered the lost secrets dropped by time in the dust and crannies of his mounting route, mid old forsaken dreams of hastening mind, and buried remnants of forgotten space. A traveler between summit and abyss, she joined the distant ends, the viewless deeps, or streaked along the roads of heaven and hell, pursuing all knowledge like a questing hound. A reporter and scribe of hidden wisdom talk. Her shining minutes of celestial speech passed through the masked office of the occult mind, transmitting gave to prophet and to seer the inspired body of the mystic truth. A recorder of the inquiry of the gods, spokesman of the silent seeings of the supreme, she brought immortal words to mortal men. Above the reason's brilliant, slender curve, released like radiant air dimming a moon, broad spaces of a vision without line or limit swam into his spirit's ken.
Oceans of being met his voyaging soul, calling to infinite discovery. Timeless domains of joy and absolute power stretched out, surrounded by the eternal hush, the ways that lead to endless happiness, ran like dream smiles through meditating vasts. Disclosed stood up in a gold moment's blaze, white sun steps in the pathless infinite. Along a naked curve in bornless self, the points that run through the closed heart of things shadowed the indeterminable line that carries the everlasting through the years. The magician order of the cosmic mind, coercing the freedom of infinity with the stark array of nature's symbol facts and life's incessant signals of event, transmuted chance recurrences into laws, a chaos of signs into a universe. Out of the rich wonders and the intricate whirls of the spirit's dance with matter as its mask, the balance of the world's design grew clear. Its symmetry of self-arranged effects, managed in the deep perspectives of the soul, and the realism of its elusive art, its logic of infinite intelligence, its magic of a changing eternity. A glimpse was caught of things forever unknown. The letters stood out of the unmoving word. In the immutable, nameless origin was seen emerging, as from fathomless seas, the trail of the ideas that made the world. And, sown in the black earth of nature's trance, the seed of the spirit's blind and huge desire, from which the tree of cosmos was conceived, and spread its magic arms through a dream of space. Immense realities took on a shape. There looked out from the shadow of the unknown the bodiless namelessness that saw God born and tries to gain from the mortal's mind and soul a deathless body and a divine name.
The immobile lips, the great surreal wings, the visage masked by superconscient sleep, the eyes with their closed lids that see all things appeared of the architect who builds in trance. The original desire born in the void peered out. He saw the hope that never sleeps, the feet that run behind a fleeting fate, the ineffable meaning of the endless dream. Hardly for a moment glimpsed, viewless to mind, as if a torch held by a power of God, the radiant world of the everlasting truth glimmered like a faint star, bordering the night, above the golden overmine's shimmering ridge. Even were caught, as through a cunning veil, the smile of love that sanctions the long game, the calm indulgence and maternal breasts of wisdom suckling the child laughter of chance. Silence, the nurse of the Almighty's power, the omniscient hush, womb of the immortal word, and of the timeless, the still brooding face, and the creative eye of eternity. The inspiring goddess entered a mortal's breast, made there her study of divining thought and sanctuary of prophetic speech, and sat upon the tripod seat of mind. All was made wide above, all lit below. In darkness's core, she dug out wells of light. On the undiscovered depths imposed a form, lent a vibrant cry to the unuttered vasts, and through great shoreless, voiceless, starless breadths, bore earthward fragments of revealing thought, hewn from the silence of the ineffable. A voice in the heart uttered the unspoken name, a dream of seeking thought wandering through space entered the invisible and forbidden house. The treasure was found of a supernal day.
In the deep subconscient glowed her jewel lamp. Lifted, it showed the riches of the cave where, by the miser traffickers of sense unused, guarded beneath night's dragon paws, in folds of velvet darkness draped, they sleep, whose priceless value could have saved the world. A darkness carrying morning in its breast looked for the eternal wide returning gleam, waiting the advent of a larger ray and rescue of the lost herds of the sun. In a splendid extravagance of the waste of God, dropped carelessly in creation's spendthrift work, left in the chantier of the bottomless world, and stolen by the robbers of the deep, the golden shekels of the eternal lie, hoarded from touch and view and thought's desire, locked in blind anthers of the ignorant flood, lest men should find them and be even as gods. A vision lightened on the viewless heights, a wisdom illuminated from the voiceless depths, a deeper interpretation, greatened truth, a grand reversal of the night and day, all the world's values changed, heightening life's aim. A wiser word, a larger thought came in than what the slow labor of human mind can bring. A secret sense awoke that could perceive a presence and a greatness everywhere. The universe was not now this senseless world, borne round inert on an immense machine. It cast away its grandiose, lifeless front, a mechanism no more or work of chance, but a living movement of the body of God.
A spirit, hid in forces and in forms, was the spectator of the mobile scene. The beauty and the ceaseless miracle lit in a glow of the unmanifest. The formless everlasting moved in it, seeking its own perfect form in souls and things. Life kept no more a dull and meaningless shape. In the struggle and upheaval of the world, he saw the labor of a Godhead's birth. A secret knowledge masked as ignorance. Fate covered with an unseen necessity, the game of chance of an omnipotent will. A glory and a rapture and a charm, the all blissful sat unknown within the heart. Earth's pains were the ransom of its prisoned delight. A glad communion tinged the passing hours. The days were travelers on a destined road, the nights companions of his musing spirit. A heavenly impetus quickened all his breast. The trudge of time changed to a splendid march. The divine dwarf towered to unconquered worlds. Earth grew too narrow for his victory. Once only registering the heavy tread of a blind power on human littleness, life now became a sure approach to God. Existence, a divine experiment, and cosmos, the soul's opportunity. The world was a conception and a birth of spirit in matter into living forms. And nature bore the immortal in her womb, that she might climb through him to eternal life. His being lay down in bright, immobile peace and bathed in wells of pure spiritual light. It wandered in wide fields of wisdom self, lit by the rays of an everlasting sun. Even his body's subtle self within could raise the earthly parts towards higher things and feel on it the breath of heavenlier air. Already it journeyed towards divinity. Upbuoyed upon winged winds of rapid joy, upheld to a light it could not always hold. It left mind's distance from the truth supreme and lost life's incapacity for bliss. All now suppressed in us began to emerge.
Thus came his soul's release from ignorance, his mind and body's first spiritual change. A wide God knowledge poured down from above, a new world knowledge broadened from within. His daily thoughts looked up to the true and one. His commonest doings welled from an inner light. Awakened to the lines that nature hides, attuned to her movements that exceed our ken, he grew one with a covert universe. His grasp surprised her mightiest energies' springs. He spoke with the unknown guardians of the worlds. Forms he descried, our mortal eyes see not. His wide eyes bodied viewless entities. He saw the cosmic forces at their work and felt the occult impulse behind man's will. Time's secrets were to him an oft-read book. The records of the future and the past outlined their excerpts on the etheric page. One and harmonious by the Maker's skill, the human in him paced with the divine. His acts betrayed not the interior flame. This forged the greatness of his front to earth. A genius heightened in his body's cells that knew the meaning of his fate-hedged works, akin to the march of unaccomplished powers beyond life's arc in spirit's immensities. Apart he lived in his mind's solitude, a demigod shaping the lives of men. One soul's ambition lifted up the race. A power worked, but none knew whence it came. The universal strengths were linked with his, filling earth's smallness with their boundless breadths. He drew the energies that transmute an age. Immeasurable by the common look, he made great dreams a mold for coming things, and cast his deeds like bronze to front the years. His walk through time outstripped the human stride. Lonely his days and splendid like the sun's. End of Canto III.
That's got to be one of my favorite cantos. But the next one also is.
I loved reading that all the way through. And the fact that we were reading together made it doable, I think, or more easily doable than one voice sustaining the entire reading. It was like a relay race, a little bit, like one of those Olympic 400 meters or something like that. Longer, quite a bit longer than that, maybe a couple miles or so. But that was really having the unitary piece. Although we were free to express ourselves and interject, it didn't seem necessary. It seemed that there was a continuity to our voices that carried the illumination or the communication here. So I really enjoyed that very much. Thank you.
I could really feel felt like a depth of transmission, of understanding, because we have gone through this same canto, I think 3 or 4 times, I mean, by pieces, and I really studied it too, and that now it was just this one complete wholeness of transmission that, at least on some level, I was able to receive. It was really just beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, I sing in choirs, and the way the choir learns a song, you sing it through once, but it's just the words. Sometimes you're singing it in a different language, German, or something that you don't really know the language. So the choir master takes you through the meaning of all the words and treats it section by section. And as you go through it, you start, your singing voice starts to change as you take on the music with a deeper sense of what's going on, and the gravitas of the singing gains in strength as you do this passage. So this feels very much like that exercise, what we've been doing, this sort of reading through, deepening our understanding of the individual sections, and then this sort of chorus, because that's essentially what we've been doing this today, is reading it like a chorus, like a choral piece.
Love that analogy, Geoffrey. I feel the same.
I did notice a couple of things as we were going through that I hadn't noticed before. For example, toward the end, there are some words in, is it French, or are those actually English words? Chantiers and entrées?
They're French root English words. I mean, these
Really?
words are in the English dictionary. But yeah, I love Geoffrey's pronunciation that he brings to these words.
I can't read them any other way.
That's great. Yeah.
Would you save me a trip to the dictionary by defining those words? Chantiers? Chantiers?
I've got it because I've looked it up and wrote the definition down.
Chantier is like a construction site. It's a work site, if you like, or a workplace. I don't know if that's what your definition gave you, Matteo.
Yeah, it also, but that and a place for sleeping or storing. Yeah, so basically like that and being a place for sleeping or storage.
Okay, that's not a sense that I don't, maybe not, that's not the modern French sense, but it might be in the word. Yeah. Entre is like an entrance, or like the pre-entrance, not the actual entrance, but the pre-entrance.
Like an antechamber?
Like an antechamber, yeah. What else was there?
In Colorado, that might be the snow room.
Right.
I think I had another. I can't remember if there was another word in there.
There's one word that on page 37, air rippled round the argosies of the gods. And the argosies, I looked that up before, and those are the merchant ships.
Yes.
This is from Greek mythology, Jason and the Argonauts.
Yes.
Ah, it's beyond gorgeous.
There's something that builds when we read like that. There's like a vibratory background that comes into being. I'm inspired to revisit. I haven't read it since we've all read it together, Infinite Conversations people, but I'm inspired to revisit the chapter, the triple status of Supermind in the Life Divine. I saw it through and through in this canto this time, and I'm probably going to read it again after this. I can't remember where it was in the Life Divine, maybe part 1.
What I so love in this current day and age to read this and to really receive again who and what Aurobindo, who he is and what he brings. It just brings hope for us, you know, for the world, for humanity, which looks a little dim at the moment to me. So this is a really just a beautiful, like a healing actually, to read this together, to feel, to really receive the energy of it again. It's beautiful. Thank you all.
I would concur with that. And also what you said earlier, Andrea, about it being like a transmission. I felt that receiving, but it was through us. We were giving voice to the transmission itself, which was, I think, an interesting aspect of how that works. Because I noticed too that like our voices could modulate to each other's or complement each other's, sometimes more dramatic and sometimes quieter, but these different shadings, maybe bringing out aspects of the text in ways that, you know, give it a richness, perhaps, that one voice alone might not be able to accomplish. I thought that was an interesting aspect of it, because it's a transmission, but it requires us as well as transmitters and receivers. And so the participation in the text, and in a way, the identification with the consciousness, the person whose story, whose journey is being reenacted here. That I thought was an interesting, I don't know, zone to be in, because there are parts of this that are not me or us or any of us, but there are other parts of it that could be aspects and that feel like aspects of ourselves, and that we're being reminded in a way of our own stories.
Aurobindo actually embarked on this. This is really his life's work, and it is a transmission. He called it himself. I don't know where but I know that this was intended as a transmission of his consciousness. And I feel that as I read, when I use my own being to read it out loud, I can feel like my channels opening, you know, becoming a part of that in some way, you know. It's really awesome.
I like the way you put that, Andrea. Feel your channel opening and becoming a part of it.
Yeah, yeah.
I think
I
the
hope you can all join us at the Savitri immersion in the springtime. It would be amazing to have this sharing, you know, in even a larger group in the body.
Let's see what opens up. I think our voice is part of the channel opening. That there's that vibratory quality. It kind of shakes things up and loosens up blockages and gets the Shakti moving. I think it's a very important part of this is the voicing that we give to the transmission. That's part of almost how we receive it, I think.
That's way beyond reading it quietly to yourself. It's just a whole other level of experience, completely different.
The reader takes it on.
And I receive it from you. It becomes very intimate.
I know, I think it was unconscious, but I think my voice took on some of your voices some of the time. You know, even in intonation and stuff, something was going on there between us that way as well.
So maybe you could say we're in the beginning stages of being a collective reading or a collective reader, a multi-consciousness reader.
Oh, this just makes me very happy.
I don't think we exactly set out to do that, what you just said, John, but I do agree that it's happening. And I like how Geoffrey drew the analogy with choir, because there is some learning and some practice, and I think that we do. And there's also a performance. They're not strictly separated. I think we're learning even as we're performing, and we're not performing for any particular audience necessarily other than ourselves and whoever's here with us watching this. I'm aware of how the language is kind of giving shape to voice, like giving some place for an unarticulated kind of desire to have words for it, you know, to have a medium of expression. And so there's like this learning that I think we are doing. And I don't know, I'm at a loss in a way for describing it from a meta perspective. Maybe it's a better idea not to go there too far and just let it happen. But I think that the intentionality we bring to it and the care that we bring to it and the listening as well, like are important elements of how it works, how this collective reader is born.
It feels to me at this moment, actually, my experience in my smaller world here, that this is a moment, a time of a breaking through, of opening and resolution. In my personal life, I have experienced that just in the last few days. It feels just the timing of everything is absolutely out of this world. Yeah. Magic is afoot. The mother is afoot.
I echo that, Andrea. I don't have anything major going on in my life except, you know, learning to live with retirement. But what I have been doing systematically over the last several weeks is whenever I'm in a moment where I'm waiting for something, you know, I'm waiting for a taxi or I'm waiting for somebody to come, or I sit down and I think, this moment is special. Just take it in and soak it in and feel the world and me in the world the way it is, you know. So you take advantage of the moments when you're usually impatient and not paying attention, to focus in and be present. And it's lifted my life in the last, little while. And this reading seems to be connected to that. So.
I'm going to do that too, Geoffrey. That sounds great. Those throwaway moments could be gold, actually.
It reminds me of a few weeks ago, I participated in a global summit on collective trauma. It was truly extraordinary. Some of the finest minds on the planet right now sharing with us. And the one nugget that keeps ringing with me is if I fully accept what is in this moment, that's the beginning of love. I mean, acceptance has already been my biggest transformative teaching over the last dozen or so years. And to hear it that way, and for that to be brought out, globally, there were 50,000 participants to that summit over the world, 170 countries. It's really quite wonderful. Just wanted to share that with you. Thomas Hubel, H-U-E-B-L. He was the organizer. If you're interested, you can look it up.
I love that. To fully accept this moment is the beginning of love.
Yeah, gorgeous. Yeah, it's right here, right now, It's all here.
Well, at this moment, I've just had a work crew arrive at my house to continue their job on the healing of our basement. And I had received a call from the foreman while we were reading, so he wants to talk with me. And I think I'll accept this moment. And
may your basement be healed.
Thank you.
Come in.
Thank you. And the water stay out. That's the with the chantier of my
Yeah.
Okay, it was wonderful. I look forward to our next time together, and I suppose we'll be going into the next canto.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good plan. Yeah, let's resume.
Another amazing
Wednesday,
one.
December.
Yeah. I hate to leave. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mm.